morning, good afternoon from wherever it is that you're watching us. My name is Mary Ngechu. I'm the lead patron for Taka Ni Mali. Taka Ni Mali is a not-for-profit organization where our objective is to build together an ecosystem of stakeholders who are around waste management, circular economy, so that we are able to have collaboration, we are able to share ideas, we are able to work together, and we take care of our environment. Today, in Taka Thursday, we have our guest Mabwai, who we are going to be having a conversation looking into CSR, looking into ESG, looking into sustainability. These are conversations that are trending globally and locally also. Our organizations, our businesses are embracing that, and we are looking into how it is that we can be able to demystify that conversation for our viewers' consumption, and also looking into how it is that we can point out economical opportunities around those conversations. So Karibu Mabwai,
Asante.
You can introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yeah, good morning, our viewers, and greetings from us. And it's good to be back home. Taka Ni Mali Foundation, it's a place I call home because it's a place where they've given me an opportunity to practice and introduce a bit of what we've done across for so many years in other worlds. So my name is Mabwai Eliaza. I come from a place called Kericho. That's my hometown. And reason why I'm into this sustainability, probably Mary, you've not known. I come from Mau. My home is close to Mau Forest, and I grew up when we used to see lots of elephants, animals coming to our home. And the forest, it used to be a beautiful place with most of these green environment, trees. In fact, I remember we used to go to the farm. Those days, we would do 10, 11, that's when we would go to Shamba. Reason being, it was cold in the morning, and nowadays it's the opposite. And if you ask me why it's the opposite, is because of the climate change aspect. People have tampered with, there are lots of, deforestation that is happening in around my home. And it gave me now a push to kind of, every other time I would ask myself, why are we still not seeing the elephants? Why are we not still seeing all the animals that used to be there and then? So it now gave me a push to kind of try to advocate now for issues of environment and all that. Again, my field, my background is in finance. I did business administration at Makerere University, finance option. And when I cleared, I had a chance to work in Uganda, then for 1 year. Then I did my master's in Kenya School of Monetary Studies, again in finance, banking and finance. And so many people have been asking me, how did you transition from being a finance person to now you are a very good environmental person? So it's very simple. I had a passion with issues of environment, and then I'm more home with environment than finance. But of course, it has helped me to understand, my background has helped me to understand now most of the issues of environment, especially when we talk of the green bonds and the idea now behind all this financing, bonds and all that. So after that, I've worked in a number of organizations, but the most important thing is when I had a chance to work in Dubai, where I was in charge of different programs of environment and sustainable programs, where I was running programs for all the 7 Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and others in Dubai. So I worked there for 5 years as in charge of waste management programs and sustainability, trainings and all that. And after 5 years, then I thought it's time to come back home. Why? Is because I had gained enough knowledge and experience, and looking back home, I had a big number of, I would say colleagues and probably other investors who would ask me questions. After UAE or after Dubai, then most of these investors are coming to Africa. And when they're looking into Africa, they're looking into probably much of West Africa and East Africa. And of course, when they zero into East Africa, they look into Kenya and Rwanda and then. So that thing kept ringing in my mind. Why don't we now, it's time to go back home and probably start doing some of these activities that we've done in Dubai, because for them, they are far ahead in terms of technology, in terms of aspects of sustainability. And so there was a big gap here in Kenya, and that's why we're here now to do some of these things. So I would look at the best, I'll be giving best practices of what we used to do, but probably I'll just paint a picture of what we used to do. We had different programs for communities. We had different campaigns, different engagement, like now what we're having with Taka Ni Mali. These are a very good conversation, and I would want to applaud your leadership, Mary, for what you've done, because this is something that we live forever. We want generation, we want to impact our young people, we want to impact the society. And one way of impacting the society is now like having these conversations that we're having. And I'm happy that you've made efforts. When I talk of now community engagement, I've participated in Taka Ni Mali, and I know you've done quite a number, and you still have very good programs for community, where we go to engage the community in terms of what they want to do with their waste management, their even issues of tree planting, generally issues of environment as a whole. It's a very great conversation. The other thing is corporate. When you talk of corporate now, in Dubai and Kenya, it's a bit different, because it's a fast world. In Dubai, it's a fast world, just like the Western countries. And when you look at now what we're doing here in Kenya, it's a bit, most of our institutions, I would say probably the big boys institutions here in Kenya, that's when they're practicing most of these issues. When you go to Safaricom, talk of probably Equity, KCB and all that, that's when they're very key. Stanchart, Barclays Bank, APSA now, they do most of these activities, and they're very key with even functional departments. So it's now the conversation that we're going to have today. That's when you mentioned about the CSR, sustainability and all that, why is very key. So I think that is a very good aspect and topic that we're going to run, because in other worlds, we used to have 2030. It used to be 2020 goals, now it's 2030. Now from 2030, it's 2050 goals. But you would find that even in Kenya, most of our corporates, they're not even in 2030. They don't even understand. They've not restructured themselves, or they've not structured themselves towards that. And I'm not looking at only corporates. I've mentioned about community engagement. I've talked about now corporates. Now we look into now the governmental organization and what needs to happen, the conversation that needs to run in most of this. And this it's interesting, Mary, because when you look at even NEMA, there are some of the things they say, they're preaching, but they don't do. Sometimes they keep saying, do as we say, but not as we do. So when you go to, there's a time I was having a conversation with the team from NEMA. They practicing, when you go to the offices, I was asking them, why are you not having bins, for papers and all that? Why are you telling people outside there, why are you telling the communities that this needs to be done? So I was challenging them now that it should actually start with them. Best practices should even be starting within the offices. And apart from that, it should now expand to other departments, probably Ministry of Education and all this, because you realize that most of these best practices, if you go to a given institution, there's a saying in our local language, in our Kalenjin language, that when you go to a place, there are very key things that you need to carry with you. Number one, make use of your eyes. So learn lessons. When you go to a place, just pick something, look at something, then take lessons. If you fail to do anything constructive, at least pick lessons. For example, once we've come here, there are a number of things that I learn. Every time I come, I look at things, I look at now even like sustainability cities, what you're doing, even the design of what you do. I pick lessons from it, then I learn. And that's a very sharp mind. So why I'm saying that is because, I was challenging now the NEMA and probably Ministry of Environment that they need to be doing some of this. They need to encourage their employees to be doing some of these things. I've seen, Mary, you've done a number of things, and people should emulate that, from you. So and we learn some of the, and we would want them now to get the concept and put into practice some of the things they tell people to do. So that is now about government institution. They ought to be doing recycling programs actively. They need to have the bins that are there in your compound. I've seen in your office you have very nice beautiful bins. They ought to be having those ones, because once you have those bins outside there, people will come and ask questions. What are these bins for? Because you cannot be having a waste management bill 2021 and you do not have people even color coding, you know, of the bins. People do not know. It's run in different county government systems. They're different color coding. So anyway, so those are some of the aspects now that we are doing in Dubai, especially with governmental organization, the municipalities, and the national levels. The other concept is about the school programs. We had very good programs that we would engage with the communities in Dubai. We had, even dramas going towards sustainability. We had panel discussion. We had arts on drawing, within the lower level, I would say the level of CBC. Those are some of the conversations and activities that we would engage back in Dubai. And those are some of the things that I would want to, as a professional now, I think those are the things that I would want to practice here in Kenya, and to partner with now Taka Ni Mali, which we've worked closely, and we still, want to run some of those programs even here in Kenya. The most important thing now is now coming to Kenya is why you mentioned about the CSR programs, that we would want to encourage corporates and even government institutions and parastatals to be participating, especially on those aspects of CSR. Yeah.
So thank you.
I think I've
yes. Yeah. So I hear several things that you have talked about,
yes.
And maybe I'll take you one by one so that you can elaborate them a little much more.
Yes.
And one of them where we start is that our relationship with you as Taka Ni Mali. And when you came back from Dubai, I think we were honored to have you as our CEO for several years. So a lot of thought through the programs that we have come together, you have been a brainchild from some of those activities.
Yes.
So I want maybe you to share a bit of experience of the programs, of how it is that we worked together when we were, especially have the conversation about us working with the Office of the First Ladies at the county government. And I want you to point out maybe a few successes and challenges that we experienced that time when you are working with us as a CEO.
Yes.
And now you are our partner as one of our lead consultants.
Yes.
Then we will have now the conversation of you as a lead consultant, and you have talked well and elaborated your capability and your capacity. So the reason why us as Taka Ni Mali we are embracing you as a lead consultant is because of that experience that you have seen out there, and that passion of bringing that experience back home. And I'm happy you've talked about the CBOs, you've talked about institutions, you've talked about schools, and you have even talked about governments. And those are the things that we are saying. How are we coming up with programs that we are able to help organizations to be able to work around sustainability and waste management? So let's start with your experience working with as a CEO for Taka Ni Mali.
Yeah, it was it's a great honor. Sometimes I feel I'm still the CEO, and people still actually call me the CEO of Taka Ni Mali. They know me as a brand ambassador for Taka Ni Mali, which I am, because just like the way for teachers they say once a teacher always a teacher. So I believe I'm still a brand ambassador for Taka Ni Mali. And it was interesting the way we started the journey with you, because I was introduced to Taka Ni Mali, to you actually as a person, by Edna Lengo, who is the First Lady of Kajiado County. And then there were lots of things that we started together, especially looking into the different programs that we wanted to do. And those days, not like now, of course, Taka Ni Mali, they've moved miles away from when we started. In fact, there's a friend who was telling me, and was it a friend? I had a political statement the other day that unatengeneza, sometimes unatengeneza serikali, but when you anakula serikali, it's a different team. So and I know we started with lots of. We didn't have a clear cut line of where we would want to head. We had so many things that we wanted to do, because number one, in Kenya, most of the people, they've not embraced the concept of recycling, the concept of waste management, And even I remember a number of times when we would visit different government offices, you talk to the team or the leaders, the managers, or even the CEOs of certain entities, even in government offices, and they would struggle to even understand what you're trying to communicate to them. You're trying to tell them, we want to engage you to support some of these activities that we want to take to Kajiado. You do proposals, very good proposals that goes to them. But I can tell you, I remember we had a gentleman who was from France, if you remember, who was with us. So you would go to a certain office, you try to sell the concept as a black CEO. Then for them, it was a bit of a challenge because they had a different perception. Now, I remember packaging the whole, what I wanted to go and give out or to pitch to a certain entity. Then for him, he went there. I packaged for him, and then I told him, go and sell this idea. For me, I could not access the CEO of that entity. Then once I packaged, I gave the whole idea to this gentleman. He went there and he was well received. He managed to have a conversation with the CEO. So that is so imagine, Mary, you have, the idea is yours, but they don't want to listen to you. But they would rather listen to someone else who is probably from another world.
You're talking about the mentality that we
Exactly.
still maybe don't believe in ourselves.
Exactly.
We think that maybe the world out there is better, or the people out there, they are better, they have better solutions.
Exactly.
But a lot of these solutions are solutions that come from us.
Yes.
We package them and we're able to, maybe they're able to communicate better.
Exactly.
And this is what we are talking about, learning from the best and bringing that experience home.
Yes.
So that we are able to localize the solutions that are global, because unless we localize them, then they will not fit and they will not suit us. And as Taka Ni Mali, I think that is where we really worked on to localize the global solution, localize the concepts that were being used in Dubai from the experience that you had, and a lot of other areas that I have traveled and brought in different models that have worked out there. And they are beautiful, they are good, but when you bring in and you look at the status as where we are. I remember when we started doing the CBOs, and I would say, and you talked about with our champion patron, Edna Lenku, who is Her Excellency Edna Lenku, who is the First Lady of Kajiado County, and she literally took us to all the government offices and selling the concept. And it was first selling the idea and people buying into the idea. But I think where we are now is that they understand the idea and the concept, and different organizations and different government offices and different counties have embraced. You have so many times been calling me that this county wants us to go and implement Taka Ni Mali. Then I keep telling you, hold on, we perfect the model in Kajiado County, and then once we perfect the model in Kajiado County, then we can invite all the other county government. They can be able to come, emulate that, and then they can be able to duplicate the same models that we have done that.
That's true.
Tell me this, I've seen you in the time doing a lot of cleanups, and I remember even that time when we were starting Taka Ni Mali, we did a lot of cleanups in Kajiado County. I wanted to talk about sustainable waste management and cleanup. They are related, but they are quite different. What do you think is the difference between cleaning up and coming up with a structure of a sustainable waste management? Perfect.
That's a very good question. And first of all, I think there is something I wanted to ask, our viewers. When Mary and the team comes to you, give them room, listen to them. Don't put them off and think that probably is not part of what can fit into your organization. Support them. And I'm saying that because of my earlier statement that I made that, at that time, people were not receptive. But I would want to say they are now receptive. And you have, Mary Taka Ni Mali, they have solutions which are local that fits to, your organization. Now, going to the question now of cleanup now. I've been to Kericho now and running different programs in Kericho and a bit of Bomet and Nakuru County on cleanup. And most of these cleanups, you realize that most of the county governments are struggling with issues of waste management. And they are struggling because they do not have even the know-how. Things have changed. The concept that we used to, because you would have even environmental officers working within the municipalities or county governments, they had a different concept then. But now so many things have changed. Even in the waste management bill, which has come, you find that most of these officers, they need to be retrained again so that they get to understand. And the communities have a different perspective towards waste management or waste, actually. They think it's the responsibility of the county government or municipality to take care of that waste. They don't own that. So that's why it's important, because it's important for all the legislatures in the county government, because at the national, that's when they do the bills and the laws and all that. Then again, for the county government, they have to restructure it now to fit their local context. And so you find that in what I'm doing now with the county governments is, now, number one, we're trying to ensure that we incorporate or we institutionalize the cleanups, because when you look at the model that Rwanda are doing, they've institutionalized the issue of the cleanup. You find that every last Saturday of the month in Rwanda, they do cleanup. Every other person is doing it religiously, including the president. So we want to kind of achieve this in Kericho, and we hope even from January, that's what we want to achieve in Kericho. And we've asked the MCAs, we've asked the county assembly of members in Kericho County to kind of come up with a legislation. And I'm there to kind of help them through the write-up and institutionalizing that. And so we've done it. We've started with the youth. We have a group called Tilil Environmental Group, which is a local CBO, and we have others now. So that Tilil Environmental Group is a group for around 40 youth who are environmentalists, and they would want to they're engaging now. Every other month they have cleanup in different sub-counties. And by the time now we're done with the sub-counties, now we'll get back to the Kericho, which is Kericho town now, and do cleanup now every last Saturday. And why we're doing this is because it's a concept that we're building up. If we come to a certain municipality, for example, I'll use the example of Nairobi, we have Rongai. If we do in Rongai, then we have a team, we come and build a team in Rongai that will be doing that every other last Saturday of the month. So we guide them, we train them in terms of how it needs to be done. And apart from that, we've also asked in every sub-county, we want the sub-county to develop what we call a trading center in the sub-county. Why this is important is because once they do the cleanup, then we also want them to appreciate or trade with waste. Huko mashinane, they don't know. Bado wanachoma. It's in Nairobi, it's a bit different. But in terms of the huko mashinane, they still do not understand that they can make a living. Waste is wealth. Taka Ni Mali, waste is wealth. So we're taking now this message to them and appreciate. So from the county level, we want to go to the sub-county level and come up with trading centers. Then from trading center, we're going to have 10 people who are managing this trading center. And that's why I'm talking of institutionalizing it. Is because
a trading center, you're basically talking about waste trading centers.
Yes, waste trading centers.
And in the Sustainable Waste Management Act is what then you would say that the act is referring at a material recovery facility. Yes, exactly.
So we've asked the MCA of that specific area to give a place or to apportion, even with the help of the county government, to apportion a place and kind of construct kind of a trading center. Other kama ni kutumia mabati and all that, that's what they're going to do. And we're happy because they've committed to do that. Now from the county, from the sub-county, then we move downwards to the ward level. Now we're going to have, in every ward, we're going to have again 10 youth and women who are going to, their role is basically to trade. And so the role of the county government now will be to support by training, by providing market. Then we have now, we will now come to Taka Ni Mali because they are the link. The Taka Ni Mali organization now will come and link us to the market. So once we've done that, so we're going to have, for example, in Kericho, we have 30 wards. So we're going to have 300 youth in Kericho who are going to participate actively on this trading. So it will be a trading. Then after that, if we're going to deal with probably PET or plastic or HDPE and all that, then we will, once we have data, we're going to have volumes. So once we have volumes, it's easy to come to you, Mary, and say, now, why don't you mobilize for us? Why don't you give us probably a recycler to come to Kericho and do value addition, not necessarily crushing and all that, but probably even to train or to show us how separation.
Treat the waste to a product.
Exactly. So that it makes a lot of sense and value, the value of it will be up.
So I hear you, what you're saying, and I like the connection about the CBOs. This is what we call the community-based organization.
Yes.
They putting together the group, and then also Lile, you have talked about the clarity of the role of the county government,
yes.
How they would come in to help these groups,
yes.
and you have also talked about the linkages with the recyclers and maybe other enablers that are that.
Yes.
And I think that is the model that we have approached
yes.
through the Taka Ni Mali.
Yes.
And I want to link that conversation with now the conversation of CSR.
Yes.
Because when you're cleaning up, you may not necessarily make money from the cleanup,
yes.
but when you're trading the recyclables, then you're making money from the recyclables.
Yes.
Then we have talked about the corporate social responsibilities
yes.
for organizations and all that. How do you think that corporates, or do you think it is beneficial for any organization to participate in such activities as part of their CSR?
Now, thank you, Mary. I think now CSR, looking at CSR now, I think it's a very interesting area because there is no legality surrounding CSR. You know, there is no regulation surrounding CSR. CSR is just a self. You know, it's a company giving or committing to kind of give back to the community. That's in a layman's language. And by ensuring again that they participate in those activities to, number one, and look at issues even of employees, look at issues of suppliers, look at issues of consumers, and other stakeholders within the ecosystem now of that CSR. So when you look at CSR now and the approach, number one, when you look in Kericho, I would quickly look at what probably Unilever does in Kericho, Unilever or Catera, what they do. Number one, they give in voluntarily to even beans. We've approached them, we've asked them to provide us with beans, even the business community. We have supermarkets in those localities, and they participate now voluntarily because they want to be part of this conversation or sustainability, sustainability journey. So they apportion their budget, part of their budget allocation to some of these activities because they understand. The understanding is on another level, especially when you talk to Unilever. Unilever, of course, is a global company. And so we, as local organizations now, they are taking up in that to understand, to provide some kind of support towards some of these activities for cleanup and tree planting. And of course, the most important thing that you look at when you're looking at CSR, you look at the resources. Of course, the resources are required, the accountability as well. You know, they have to be accountable of the resources. They have to communicate to the outside world that this is what they do. That's why when they give you beans, they would want to be branded under the name of that entity. It's because they want to communicate to the outside world or their consumers that this is what they are doing, especially to other CBOs and all that. And that is why we encourage most of these, and at your level, we encourage most of the organizational companies or corporates in Kenya to accept this CSR conversation, to be part of the conversation within themselves, and even within to allocate budgetary allocation. And I'm happy, Mary, because I've seen in your companies, the LPG, you've allocated, there's an allocation that you've made that goes to CSR and doing some of these activities. Because if it wasn't there, I don't think as Taka Ni Mali would be where we are. It started with LPG, and now we're having this conversation and encouraging other entities, now local entities, that they need to be part of that conversation of CSR.
Yes.
The other thing is, you look at the goals, they need to have certain goals. Just like the way they want to make money out of as a company, the main goal definitely is to make profits and all that. But again, the conversation is changing. You need to be part of. You need to have goals towards now participating in some of these environmental activities and CSR. You need to equip even your employees at your place of work. You need to have inclusive, like what you're doing. I've seen what you do in your organization. I think you have a big percentage of gender. When it gets to gender, I've seen LPG doing that. You have a large number of women working. So that is kind of a CSR. When you talk about CSR now, it's part of what you do with the external and within even yourself. You talk of social. Social now is what you're doing. You ensure that even lunch. I was happy when I used to work at your place, and you used to provide us with lunch. So that is now the social part of it that you're doing as an institution. And it's the same thing that we want to encourage most of these corporates, most of these companies, whether big or large, to be involved, to involve themselves with some of these CSR activities. Yes.
So you talked about earlier when you were introducing yourself,
yes,
that around environment and investors now are coming to Africa. They're targeting or they're looking keenly in one of the region like East Africa.
Yes.
And I want to bring the conversation of CSR, ESG,
yes,
sustainable goals to a small organization. Imagine a micro or an SME. Is there a value for small organizations or micros, because you have talked about CSR activities, yes, for big organizations, and you've given an example of Unilever, how they are supporting your CBOs that you're working with in Kericho.
Yes.
But do you think there's value in small organizations or small entities to embrace those conversations of ESG, SDG, CSRs and all that?
Yes, there's a conversation now when initially for COP26, there's a conversation and they launch something to do with ESGs and all that, and they are taking it seriously. For for any organization, whether small or big, whether it's a small SME, of course, SME one day would become a big entity. LPG, I'm 100% sure Line Plus Group, when they started as a small entity, but now it's a big entity. And why it's a big entity is because you had goals, you had probably strategic plans, like in 2020, this is where we need to be, in 2030 and 2050, it will be a big corporation. So it's and I'm sure at the level that you are, you easily can attract investors from outside the country, most of these multinational. And I know for sure the other companies that probably have come to you, it's because there are some of the things that you do, because when they do an audit in terms of when they strategizing, they would want to come and invest in Kenya. If it's energy, for example, if it's an energy company, for example, I'll use probably Shell or Total. There's some of the things that they will look at when they're coming to invest, is because at their level, there are things they value more. They value more ESG, what you do with your environment. They value more what you produce. Is it environmental friendly? When you're doing your packaging, are the materials you're using, are they environmental friendly? So those are some of the things they value. Do you treat your employees right? Do you have these policies? Even for suppliers, your suppliers. You've seen in Kakuzi, for example, if you scan their products in their supermarkets, it will give you even there's this issue of I think it was child labor. Are you engaging children when you're doing your production? Or are your managers doing the right thing in terms of are they accountable enough, or are they open enough when they're when you're doing some of those practices, especially at your business premises? So these are some of the very key aspects that people, our company, our local SMEs, they need to know that if you want to trade with most of these organizations outside, because sometimes with the current, the new regime now, with the leadership of Dr. William Samoei Ruto, we've had him mention a number of times about trading. We need to export more, we need to build on SMEs and all that. But when they are talking about building SMEs, now we need to know that there are some conversation within your organizations that you need to have as a management, so that you build on some of those things, which becomes attractive now to the international community. Because like I mentioned, they say after Middle East, it's Africa. That's the conversation across. Because Africa have different resources. Africa has a very wide market. Because when you look at the population explosion that is happening in Africa, they're looking at it like I think it should be 2050, it should be the largest population across the world in Africa. So that means there is a good market here. And most of these companies now will be coming to to probably Kenya and East Africa to come and invest. And when they come in to invest now, as a SME, you need to be prepared. As an organization, you need to be prepared. And what I mean by you need to be prepared is because you need to put your house in order. You need to consider now some of these, at least we've given you now this information for free, that you need to work on your CSR activities, ESG. And of course, when you talk, I had mentioned about the CSR. Now, the ESG, for those people who probably might be wondering what it is, it's environment you keenly look at. You need to have a strategy on environment. You need to have a strategy on social aspect of your organization. You need, and when I talk of social, of course, it's what I had mentioned earlier on. It needs to be inclusive. You need to have, disability, probably policies within yourself. Even in your building, you need to have the ramp, so that it's not only the staircase, because those are some of the things which are they look into. We look at issues again of governance now. That is the last G. And of course, when you talk of governance, is a style of leadership. It's what are you paying your taxes right? Are you having a budget now for some of these environmental aspects or CSR? Are you having it as a board at the board level? Are you taking care of your stakeholders well? Are you looking into your suppliers? Do you go to an extent of looking into where you get your surplus from? For example, we've seen what Coca-Cola have done in terms of like Sprite. You remember the Sprite used to have a bottle which it was green. Was it green? Green in color. But now they have a clear packet. Why did they have to do that? Of course, that's the conversation now that needs to run in the mind of an SME. You need to consider when you buying, for example, if you're dealing with products that you get from farmers, you need to understand, are these farmers exploiting people to make them produce some of the products they are doing? So that is a conversation, because if it happens, if the international investors would realize that you're taking shortcuts in terms of there's a short, you mistreating a certain probably worker at your farms and all that, then trust me, they'll pull out, because they are ahead in terms of what they do. So yes, for entities in Murang'a, for entities in Kericho, for entities in Narok and in Isiolo, it's very important that as you plan your organization as an SME, you need to also incorporate that. And the basic thing is, they will ask you, without your knowledge, they'll ask for reports, they'll ask for your financial performance, and among the key things they'll be looking at is, they look at in your aspect, do you have a component of CSR allocation that you've done? So those are very key aspects. And for your information again, they need to understand, most of these entities, even if it's an SME, they need to know that as a CSR, it's kind of a donation that you're giving. And of course, for donations, it's not subjected to any tax. So it's important for them to know. And it's a smart way that most of these organizations, big organizations, I don't want to say they hide behind CSR. But they don't hide from KRA. They do some of these things. They are philanthropists enough, and they participate in some of these things. And they're very smart because they don't subject to what they've given to the community. And people would look at CSR in a very big. They have it in their mind like it's something big. It's not big, Mary. Number one, if you have clients, who they buy from you, of course these are clients who gives you business. And in one way or another, you would want to, like for example, schools. I've seen Equity Foundation, there's something they do. They give back to schools. Equity Foundation, they sponsor students and all that. It's one way of giving back to the community. So for them, they have a specific way of giving back to their customers. And by giving that, when they do donate, now whatever the donation they give back to the community, of course it will build onto, number one, two things. They'll maintain their clientele in terms of a profit margin. You would find that their employees, again, they're happy because, they're treated well. And so you would find the employee turnover is very low because they don't move out, they're treated well, they provided, they give them lunch and all that. So all that forms part of now the social aspect part of it. So the governance now is where you come in now And I've heard you mention about the trainings now that you offer to most of these. You have different trainings. I've seen Taka Ni Mali having trainings, and I'm part of that. Who train out the corporate. So we want to encourage now most of these SMEs, if they are lost somehow, they talk to Taka Ni Mali so that they get to understand how they should structure the aspects within the setup of the organization to have an aspect of CSR and ESG.
So thank you. And I'm happy you've mentioned many different examples of entities, and I think the reason why we are having the Taka Thursday conversation and the reason why we are engaging different stakeholders is because of what you've talked about, that maybe the perception that people have out there, and also what the organizations are doing. And our platform is so that different organizations are able to showcase and have conversations about their best practice. Yes. You have given an example of what Equity is doing. You're not very sure. In our conversations, we'll have Equity as a good organization that has best practice to share, because as Taka Ni Mali, we believe that it is in sharing the best practice, it is in showcasing the best practice that organizations are having, that others are able to emulate the best practices that the other organizations are having. We also believe that it is a collective responsibility. It is not my responsibility alone, it is not your responsibility alone, it is not the responsibility of the government. And right now we have what we are calling the extended producer responsibility yes. that is coming in. It could be a regulatory, but right now it's on it is on self-regulate. You regulate yourself self. Yes. Organizations have embraced it because it is one of the best or good practice that organizations have embraced. Yes. So we are looking and building in a lot of awareness creation, and this is where we are having this conversation, so that even the small organization, even the home stand, even the small individuals are able to embrace and understand that it's a collective responsibility. Yes. You talked about programs that you are doing in Dubai for schools. Why do you think it is necessary that we start having these conversations of waste management, environment, taking care of the environment with schools? Interestingly, there is a saying that about the dog. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yes. So I think it sells well to the concept why it's important now for our country to have a conversation and engage even in curriculum of CBC. And it makes me now, there've been a lot of conversation with CBC that CBCO is expensive, is doing what, is doing what. For me, I think I would look at it differently and say CBC has a good side and it has probably a bad side. Number one, the good side is, and Mary, I'm sure you've been watching in most of these media houses, stories of showcasing kids going to clean the environment, kids planting trees and all that, which initially was not happening. But now with CBC, it's happening. We've also seen most of the institution, most of these schools having eco clubs and all that. Before Kitambo, we used to have wildlife, we used to have debates, wildlife, clubs and all that. But it got to a point that we did not have again those wildlife clubs in schools and all that. So I think it's very important, because what used to happen in Dubai, we used to have different activities for different schools. We would engage now CBC students, for example, to draw. You would give them a challenge to draw trees, environment, and have visualize how they would want an environment to look like. And interestingly, they would, as a child, they would start with the sun, because it's something that they see. They even as a parent, sometimes among the first things that you teach your child, you teach them about probably the moon at night, the sun, the wind, and they would have questions on surrounding that, the rains and all that. So when you engage them now, you probe them now to kind of learn more, become interesting. And I remember when we used to engage now, because we had specialists, on school programs, you would have education specialists now engaging the children now on all those aspects. So they would ask the children, what brings rains?
And so in Dubai, since it was a very dry area, so you would find rain coming once. So they would be interested now to ask, why is it in other countries, there are lots of rains, and in Dubai, it only rains once a year? So it makes them now to have a conversation and probe their mind and really ask questions. So what forms the rains, you know? So you would tell them it's probably the temperatures, the climate, the trees aspects. And in that conversation, you would find that it was very interesting to engage them at that level, because what they learn it would now, as they grow up, they would appreciate whatever they learned when they were young. We would also engage them to in all environments. They would have them. We would issue them with probably certificates of what they have done, especially on we used to have environment drawing competition. We used to have debates, even up to the university level. So in Dubai, we used to have those debates on environment. We would give them topics, innovations as well. They would come up with different innovations, the solar panels, small ones, and they would have different, very unique ways of giving solutions innovatively. So, and it's the same thing that we wish, and I wish our government would really adopt that, because back in Dubai, they would even have a unit of environment on its own. They would learn about environment, they would learn about trees, they would learn about why it's important to have trees. Not like in Kenya, where I don't know if you had the conversation. There was a certain MP who was asked, and especially it was it Narok Mau? It was just in that ecosystem of Mau. So the MP was asked not to allow the community to cut trees, and they would say, akauliza, what is the connection? Ukikata miti, what is the connection between the rainfall and the trees? So it was a very interesting, and it was coming from a member of parliament. Remember, it was coming from a member of parliament asking, kwani ukikata miti, nini itafanyika na mvua? It will still rain. But now, you see, for most of us, we were now looking at it that we were not looking at blaming him, we were blaming the foundation, his foundation, because he did not have an understanding of why it's important to have those trees. And I'm not surprised, I'll not be surprised to still have people looking at it or not understanding the link between the high temperatures that is happening within the country and within the world, and probably trees and all that. So there is definitely a direct linkage. But for children, when you teach them that way, when you have that conversation, when you have that debate, that message will go home without really, because they'll appreciate. So that's why it's important now, when we have some of those activities that is done, especially on children, to be done as well within our institutions. For the Eco Club, and Mary, I can tell you this for free, for these international schools within Nairobi or within Kenya, their curriculum, I'm 100% sure there's a concept of environment. But when you look at our other system, our 844 system, it does not really look into that, or it doesn't give a serious thought on that aspect of environment. So it's important now to have in all that ecosystem. It's important that we teach our children, we engage our children, whether in Sunday schools, when they're going to Sunday school, in our churches, in our in our institutions. We need to engage them. Even at family levels, we need to engage our children when doing that. Even for the programs they are watching, I'm 100% sure most of our parents would now only look into probably cartoon channels and all that. But there are also environmental programs that we want to encourage our parents, even the wildlife. We want to encourage our parents to allocate even 30 minutes of their time to watch together with the children, so that you will have a very interesting conversation when they see those animals, when they see environment. They'll ask you as a mother, they'll ask you as a father, what do we do? What is happening? Because sometimes children, they think outside and they might ask not obvious questions, but again, you will have time to engage with them and they learn now more about most of this environment.
So from your conversation, I hear you talking about changing the mindset,
yes,
of everyone, including starting from the children, and you have given examples of maybe some things that we talk about, or some things that we do, and maybe not because we mean bad, but because we are not aware.
Yes.
So you are talking about conversations that make almost everybody aware and be conscious about the small bits that we need to do and take care of our environment. Yes. And I think as Taka Ni Mali, this is the reason why we are having the conversations that we are having, because you cannot be an expert of everything. I'm an expert in my manufacturing area. I'm growing my expertise in the area of environment. You have talked about being an expert in area of sustainability, and we are having this conversation, collaboration with different stakeholders, so that we bring our mind together. We jog the mind of everyone, so that in this journey of taking care of our environment, so that we take care of the mitigation of that conversation you started with, that when I was growing up, in my neighborhood, we had animals, we had elephants, the area was green, and maybe what has caused that is a climate change that has come in, and we are having the conversations of understanding what is really causing this climate change, what is our role in it, so that we just not sit and talk about thinking that is the government, thinking that is the development partners who are supposed to do that. So the conversations that we bring is that we understand that everybody has a responsibility, has a role to play. And it could come even with how it is that you dispose waste from our homesteads. And maybe in the next 2 minutes, talk about what is the responsibility of a homestead, especially in how it is that we manage or how it is that we separate our waste, and then also maybe any other parting shot that you'd want to tell our viewers before we end the session.
Yeah, thank you. I think I would want to highlight some of the low-lying fruits. Number one, for SMEs, what they can do. When we talk about ESG and CSR and sustainability, there are low-lying fruits that you can have a strategy in your organization, in your company. That these are some of the few things that I would want to look into. Issues of water. Instead of using probably plastic or bottled plastic water, you can decide to use what is it called?
Dispensers.
Dispensers, yes. You can decide to use dispensers. And what you do at the end of the day, if you compare, you are going to cut a lot of cost at the end of the year. The other thing is the energy. Look at, how did your organization look at energy? How do you have this energy? I was at Kenyatta University the other day, and in their sockets, they have a sticker, KU energy. Switch off, lights were not in use. Those are some of the few aspects that you can do. In your organization, again, when you're looking at a social aspect, do you have a labor policy within your organization? Do you have it structured so that probably it says the 2/3 gender? Do you have women? Do you have, all that? And the other things is about probably governance. Do you have trainings in your organization? Do you train as a director of the company, even if it's an SME? Do you attend some of this training so that you're equipped with skills and knowledge, so that if you have your strategy now, 2030 strategy or 2050 strategy, once you have this training, and I'm happy because you offering Taka Ni Mali, they're offering that training. It will be good for you to be trained on some of those aspects, because if you come and get trained by Taka Ni Mali on aspects of ESG, number one, I'm 100% sure, Mary, that you're going to give them a certificate. Now, when you go to these NGOs, when you go to this multinational organization, there's a certificate that they'll be interested to look at. Ulimaliza shule probably 1998 or 2000. Now, have you gone outside the box to learn some of these new aspects that are happening? You keep hearing about COP26, now we're in COP27. You need to learn some of these things within your organization. You also need, as an organization, are you philanthropic enough to give in a small way? I'm not. When we talk of charity or CSR, it doesn't mean that you have to use a lot of 100,000 shillings or 1,000,000 shillings, even 10,000, even 5,000. And I remember, maybe there's a time you took me while I was the CEO. You took us to Ngong to go and give donation to a children's home. So that is part of the charity. That is where it begins. You start with small actions. Then the next thing, you will grow it. You will now learn how to manage until you grow to a certain level. The other things again that you can look into, you can, like for wildlife, you can participate in some programs in schools, even by going to offer some of even trees to different schools and all that. You can even give bins or recycling bins and all that.
And
I know time is up.
Yes.
But it is important, and I know it's a wide area, and I would mention something in a parting shot that will come probably in our next discussion and come and discuss. It's on sustainability reports. You need to learn you need to incorporate sustainability reports into your business. And I know probably as an SME, it's still, you feel that probably it's not, you're not yet there. But for big institutions, for banks, for Equitel, for Safaricom and all that, they need to, they're giving it out, they're highlighting it out in terms of what they target. First of all, they've given targets in terms of what they want to achieve in 5 years. And now that sustainability report now is done. You break it yearly and say, I had a target to achieve this 100%, and this is what I've done. So you're communicating now to the world, to the stakeholders, that this is what you intended, and this is what you've achieved. So I'll come back, Mary. We'll have this conversation again. And but we encourage all of us to be philanthropists, and in terms of giving. You participate, support most of these CBOs who are doing some of these activities, support the youth groups, support them by even providing and participating as an organization. Allow your staff, Mary, to participate in some of these activities. They should allow even 1 hour of their time within the year. Allow them to go and participate in some of these activities, and that is one way of giving back to the society.
Thank you so much, Mabwai. I think, as you say, we can have another hour. We're going to have you in another session, and on the next session we'll focus on sustainability reporting and why it is necessary for SMEs and corporates to consider starting to do sustainability reports, because they communicate and they add value to our organization. As Taka Ni Mali, we have talked about several conversations on what we are doing. We've talked about capacity building, and Mabwai has kept on highlighting some of the trainings that we are doing, and we are helping organizations to be able to tackle some of these challenges. We give you tools, we give you templates that you're able to work with as an organization to come up with this reporting that is talking about. Our major role also is with the CBOs that we work with. We plug them in with organizations so that they can be able to take care of your solid waste, and they can also be able to earn a living as they are selling the recyclables, and as we are taking care of our environment. And that's why we say, Taka Ni Mali, waste is wealth.
What is a circular economy? A circular economy is a system of getting the most value of resources we use to ensure that we keep them at their highest utility for as long as we can. That is according to Ellen MacArthur Foundation in 2022. The circular economy concept ensures that resources are used efficiently using the 3 guiding principles of reduce, reuse, and recycle. This is achieved by eliminating waste and pollution, circulate products and materials to their highest value, and to regenerate nature. By the way, this improves the economy, society, and environment by creating jobs, reducing litter, reducing imports, reducing resource extraction, and improving human health. The circular economy is critical to accomplishing sustainable development goals in economic, societal, and environmental dimensions. Kumbuka, Taka Ni Mali.